All right, we will go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. We are super excited to have you here. We're super excited to explain more about the Up2Us Sports VISTA program. And so we will go ahead and get started. I am Kim. I am the Assistant National Director of our VISTA program. So I oversee our entire summer VISTA program and our full year VISTA program. And I will be the one kind of walking you through both programs today as we explain a little bit more about VISTA and what we have to offer here. If you have any questions throughout this entire presentation, please feel free to pop them in the chat. We have our program manager and our VISTA leaders who help support our program monitoring that, so they will be able to answer them, any questions if they come through, and then we'll also use those questions throughout to be able to make sure that everyone has a full understanding of the program, both the summer and the full year. Great, so today we are going to really just jump in, like, what is VISTA? Because sometimes that can be a little bit confusing. We will go through our summer VISTA program, our full year VISTA program, and then the application process, any next steps, and then we'll answer any and all questions that come out through this entire presentation. So if you aren't as familiar with Up2Us Sports, our main mission is really to identify, train, and support coaches to transform lives for youth and programs in their communities. So we do this through 4 main programs: our Up2Us Coach program, which you may be familiar with, our Up2Us VISTA program. We have a workforce development piece of our program, and then our training. So all 4 of those elements help build capacity for sports organizations in several different ways. And so we are going to focus today on the Up2Us Sports VISTA program. And so our VISTA program is an AmeriCorps program, and sometimes that can get a little bit confusing. So we want to break down exactly like what AmeriCorps is. So what really is a federal organization, and their main mission is to improve lives, strengthen communities, and foster civic engagement through service. And they do this through 4 main programs. So they have AmeriCorps VISTA, they have AmeriCorps National Civilian Community Corps, or NCCC, and then they have AmeriCorps State and National. So our VISTA program is Volunteers in Service to America, and we help build capacity. NCCC does disaster relief, and then AmeriCorps State and National is what our coach program falls under. So we have our grant through AmeriCorps, who really fosters this idea of strengthening communities through civic engagement or service. And then VISTA, which is what we're talking about today, like I said, is Volunteers in Service to America. So what their main piece in this AmeriCorps umbrella really is to end poverty through national service by building capacity in organizations. So what they really focus on is making sure that those organizations at the grassroots level have people that are working with them behind the scenes to be able to support the work they're doing on the ground. So whether that's helping with development, marketing, program development, finances, operations, organizations need capacity building and all these different ways to make sure their program can run smoothly. So we can place a VISTA volunteer at your organization through AmeriCorps to help support those teams or those departments so that your work can be better supported. So the way that this all works with Up2Us Sports and with you and AmeriCorps, it can all be a little bit confusing. So AmeriCorps at the top level offers grants that we are able to apply to. And so what Up2Us Sports did is we went to AmeriCorps and we applied for a VISTA grant. And AmeriCorps awarded us that grant, and we were able to place 100 summer VISTAs in a 9-week program from mid-June to mid-August. And then we're also able to place 75 full year VISTAs nationally. And so we are the ones who manage the grant, write the reports, all that kind of stuff through AmeriCorps. So we are really at this like intermediary level. And then what we can do is then we can offer to sites across the country who need that capacity building support from a VISTA member. We can then have the opportunity to place them at your host site so that they can do the work at your organizations on the ground. So it's really just kind of like we sit in the middleman between AmeriCorps and then the member serving on the ground at your organization. So Up2Us Sports, like I said, has 2 programs for VISTA programs. We have our Summer VISTA program, and we have our Up2Us Sports VISTA program, which is a full year. And so this today we're going to really walk through both of these programs, but in order for you to get a better kind of like pre-glimpse at these two programs, we can really see here how they're broken down. So the full year program is a full year, they have different cost shares, and they have different benefits and different things that make one of them an advantage to the other. So what we're going to do right now is we're really going to walk through each of these programs kind of step by step, so you have a clear understanding of what you get from a summer VISTA as opposed to a full year VISTA, and answer any questions you have about both programs. Cool. So our Up2Us Summer VISTA program is where we're going to start. This is our second year running the program, and last summer it was amazing. It was wonderful. We had a great time, and so it runs from mid-June to mid-August. We don't have the exact start dates because AmeriCorps hasn't given them to us yet, but we're anticipating mid-June to mid-August, 9 weeks. Your VISTA will receive a living allowance, and this could be if they're living at home, if they're living by themselves, wherever they're living, they will get a living allowance. And then they get to choose between an education award or an end of service summer stipend. And this is a full-time position. So the VISTA for the summer program, that 9 weeks, should be working between 35 and 40 hours a week, and no less than 30 hours in terms for it to be considered full-time. So we know that we're in the middle of this pandemic, and we're not really sure what's going to happen in the next few months with vaccines and things like that. So currently with the VISTA program, VISTAs can work remote or in person. You have the option with the summer program to do either of those. We just want to make sure that you're following your state and local regulations for where your organization is. So things in LA may look different than things in Ohio or Florida or New York. So we're giving the freedom for sites to choose between remote or in person, but we do just need to be aware of like those policies that you have if you are working in person to make sure that everyone is safe. With the summer program, since it is so short, it's only 9 weeks, unfortunately, VISTAs do not get any PTO or personal time off. They are able to follow your holiday schedule. So if you do summer Fridays, if you have 4th of July off or things like that, they can get those days off, but they wouldn't be able to go on like a week vacation in the middle of this 9-week program because it is so short. We do allow VISTAs to have like a day of leave, maybe, you know, one Friday they have to do something and they need to take the day off. That's fine. They can get no more than like 2 of those days, and the expectation is that they would make up those hours at a different time. Maybe they stay late an hour a couple of times, or they work a Saturday because maybe you have an event or something like that. But we really don't have any PTO for this program, unfortunately. If there is an emergency in the middle of the summer, maybe a family member gets sick, or they get sick, or you know something happens, a VISTA for the summer program can apply for up to 5 days of emergency leave, and they could get granted that. But again, that couldn't count for like a vacation. It would truly have to be an emergency that they would have to leave service for a few days to handle and then be able to come back. So I did want to talk through and break down that living allowance piece and the education award or the end of service award for the program. So we can place our VISTAs anywhere in the whole United States. We have just selected some of our major market cities to do the breakdown. So we don't set the living allowance for our VISTA members. AmeriCorps does at a national level, and they base this off of the poverty line of the county that your organization is located in. So it's not where your VISTA lives, it's not where you live, it's where your organization's address is located, like a physical building of your organization. And so for a site in New York City, they would make over that 9-week program a little over $3,700, which equals out to $59.24 a day. And then they would have a choice between an education award or a cash stipend. They don't get both. They have to choose one or the other at the beginning of their service, and then they would get that at the end of the 9-week program. And so if you're like, I don't live in any of these places, this doesn't really help me, you can look at this document, which is located here, and they have all of the counties in the whole United States, and you can find the county you're located in. You can find the day rate, which is listed here, and then you just multiply it by 63 days, which is 9 weeks. So that is how you determine the living allowance for your county where you're located. And this will be really important if you get granted a Summer VISTA and you're starting to do recruiting. You can determine, like, you can figure out how much the living allowance is for your VISTA in your county. Like I said, we don't control what the living allowance is. It's set by AmeriCorps. But if you're like, you know, we want to make sure that our VISTA gets a little bit more. We don't think this is enough. Unfortunately, you aren't able to give VISTAs like additional cash. So you can't say like, I'm going to pay you more in dollars per hour. We can't do that. That's against AmeriCorps policies and regulations. But what you can do is you can give them other types of benefits. You could give them a rent subsidy that you could pay directly to their landlord. You could give them gas cards. You could give them like MTA or public transportation passes. You could give them like grocery cards, all these other types of things that aren't cash exactly in their hands, but are other benefits to help support other costs that they may have. Cool. Danielle, do we have any questions in the chat right now that would be relevant to answer?
Yes, we have one. Are there any restrictions, like can Summer VISTAs work in the evenings or on the weekends?
No, there aren't any restrictions as long as they're within that 35 to 40 hours a week. So we wouldn't expect them to work from like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. because that's a very long day. But if, you know, they work, maybe they have Monday off, Tuesday off, but they work Wednesday through Sunday, that's completely fine as long as they're staying within that 35 to 40 hours a week.
Perfect, thanks.
Great. Cool. So now I kind of want to jump into, those were kind of the logistics of the summer program. And now we're going to pivot to talk about like what a Summer VISTA can do. So like I mentioned, VISTA is all about capacity building. And so this summer, our VISTAs can work in 4 main areas. They can work in program operations, they can work in development, they can work in marketing or community engagement. Unlike last summer, if you had a Summer VISTA, we aren't allowing our VISTAs this summer to operate in a coaching role. We are more so focusing on that capacity building piece. So 4 main areas that your VISTA can work in. And within this, I just want to highlight that if you're doing program operations, they can't maybe be a coach at your summer camp, but they can help your operations team at summer camp. So they could help, you know, man drop off pickup, they could help organize lunches and snacks, they could help organize schedules. They could, you know, make sure equipment and gear and all that kind of stuff that you need to operate summer. If you're doing summer camp are there, they can help set up things. So they can help programmatically in like a camp setting. They just really can't be the one like coaching the kids. And in development, they can obviously help with writing LOIs, doing research, writing grants, marketing, social media, helping you with any like events you may be happening. And then with community engagement, like getting your word out. If you have a community event, there's all these types of ways that your VISTA can be involved in this capacity building space, while also helping you do the things that your organization does. So for our program, like I said, it's 9 weeks. So we have a pretty comprehensive programming schedule for the VISTAs. And so on your left here, you can see like in the first week, we'll give them an orientation. We'll make sure they have everything they need to know about the program, and then they're good to go from there. So each VISTA will also be given a cohort leader, which will essentially be like their point of contact with Up2Us Sports. And their cohort leader will be the one, will check in with them, and they'll do a check-in call 2 to 3 times this summer to make sure everything's going okay, they understand what they're doing. If they have any questions about anything, they'll have someone at Up2Us Sports that they can contact about the program. And then we'll also offer 2 professional developments and 2 reflection activities for the Summer VISTAs so that they can get a little bit more out of this experience other than, you know, supporting your organization doing great work. We want to make sure that they're also getting some additional resources and learning out of this experience. So they'll have those reflection activities will be connected to the professional development. So it should all go together. Of these activities, we imagine that, you know, the PDs will be maybe 2 hours of their time. The reflection activities might be 2 more hours of their time. And the check-in calls are only like maybe 15 minutes. So of this entire summer, we would be asking for about 5 hours of your VISTA's time in order to attend these check-in calls, do the reflection activities, and attend our professional development. Great. And so what we also wanted to jump in here as well. And so with AmeriCorps and with the VISTA program, they have something called an opportunity listing, a VAD, and these are documents that help us understand like what your VISTA is doing and how your VISTA applies to the program. And so what we did last summer and what we will continue to do this summer is there will be one general opportunity listing that your VISTA will have to apply to in order to be a part of the program. And then within that, we have our VAD, or our VISTA assignment description, which is like the program description or the position description of the program. So like I mentioned before, we will have one general document that highlights that you have your VISTA is going to be working in program operations, development, marketing, or community engagement. So, you know, we'll have one universal listing for our summer program, and we'll have one universal VAD for our summer program. And then, so that last summer got a little bit confusing because we're like, what are the summer VISTAs actually doing? So we will ask each site to submit to us a summer project description, which will break down exactly what your VISTA is doing. So let's say that you're like, we would like our VISTA to work in our development and in our marketing team. So we will send you a document, you'll send it back to us, and you'll really explain like what exactly your VISTA is going to be doing in development and what exactly your VISTA is going to be doing in marketing. And this will help us understand what you're doing, but also help you as you're guiding your VISTA through the summer project, because they can be really clear on what you expect them to accomplish for the summer. And you both can look back at that document and say like, okay, we wanted you to make 15 social media posts. It looks like you've only really made 2 at this point. We have 3 weeks to go. How are we going to get all these other posts in? So it's an accountability document for not only you, but for your VISTA and for us. So everyone understands what that VISTA is going to be doing. And like I said, with those 4 program areas, so program operations, marketing, development, or community engagement, we really recommend that a summer VISTA only works in 1 to 2 of those areas. Because it is such a short amount of time, we want to make sure that the projects they're working on truly do have an impact at your organization. And if a VISTA is like toggling between those 4 areas, I don't know if they'll get as much accomplished as they could if they were really just devoted to 1 or 2 of those 4 key areas. So if you get awarded a summer VISTA, you would then submit to us this summer project description so that we would have a very clear idea of the things that you would like your VISTA to accomplish over that 9-week period. Great. And so this summer does have a cost share portion that's new from last summer. So we are asking that for the summer VISTA program, this 9-week program, each site would be paying or having a cost share of $300 to host the VISTA. And so this $300 payment will be made within 30 days of signing the MOU. And so if you are unable to fill your VISTA award, or if the VISTA quits within the first week, you would be refunded $200. If the VISTA makes it past the first 7 days, but maybe quits at like week 5, you wouldn't receive any additional refunds. But at the onset, you pay in that $300. If you can't fill, or if the VISTA quits right away, you do get $200 of those dollars back. So that is what the cost share will look like for the summer VISTA program this year. We are anticipating that the summer VISTAs will get gear, so we'll get a shirt and a bag, and then also that the professional developments and things like that will also be a part of what comes with that cost share fee. And so our call for partnership for the Summer VISTA program is currently open. So it opened last week and it will be open through March 12th. We anticipate sending out award letters around March 22nd, and then we will have a mandatory orientation on March 24th. And this will really dig in a little bit deeper about the processes for the opportunity listing, the summer project description, how to find your VISTAs, nominate them, all that kind of stuff will be highlighted and gone over in that orientation. We would need your MOU signed by April 2nd, and then that $300 cost share would be due by May 2nd. And then again, if the VISTA doesn't start or it quits in the first week of programming, we would refund you $200 of that $300 cost share. So Danielle, before we transition out of the Summer VISTA program into the full year program, are there any additional questions?
Yeah, the first question is, if VISTA is working in program operations, can they manage and oversee coaches?
If they are not AmeriCorps coaches, they could support them in what they need to do. So if they're giving them their schedules, and if the coach comes to them and and then they help direct them to where they need to go, yes. If they cannot manage other AmeriCorps members, so let's say you have Up2Us Sports coaches, our Summer VISTA couldn't manage those coaches, but they could help support the other logistics of program operations.
Cool. And is administrative work allowed?
So this is kind of a yes and no question. So like with any position, there's administrative work. Like they're going to have a calendar, their calendar, they're going to have to man. They may have to answer the phone every now and again, but their main task should not be administrative. So they shouldn't be managing someone else's calendar. They shouldn't be the person who answers the phone. That's not really the point of this project. The big point of this project is to help build capacity in a way that you're working on a specific team and you're helping drive that team forward. So with marketing, helping with your social media, helping plan a gala event, helping plan a community event, things like that. So it really shouldn't be administrative in nature.
And can organizations hire the same Summer VISTA as last year?
Yes, that's a great question. So you can hire the same Summer VISTA as last year. The only thing that I would just be aware of is if they're choosing the education award, any AmeriCorps member and any program can only receive up to 2 full-time education awards. So if they have been an AmeriCorps member previously, they just need to be aware about how much educational award they've accumulated through their AmeriCorps program. But they can also take the cash stipend. If they've reached that max, they can just take the $311 at the end of the program.
Awesome. And are VISTAs able to work in one category, like marketing and community engagement, or can they work in multiple categories?
So for the Summer VISTA program, they have to work within one of those 4 key areas. So like program operations, marketing development, or community engagement for the summer program. And they can work within, 1 to 2 of those areas for the program. But for outside of that, we could maybe have a further discussion, but we really do want the summer program to be within those 4 main buckets. And if you have a specific assignment that you're thinking about, reach out to us, because we could probably find a way to fit it into a bucket.
Cool. And how would having a VISTA affect an organization's taxes? So would the VISTA count as like a 1099 or W-2 employee?
No, so they're technically service members and they get their living allowance and all those types of things. They fill that out with AmeriCorps at the government level. So they do get their living allowance paid through AmeriCorps. They will get a W-2 or a tax form from AmeriCorps, but that's not on the site level. It's all on the AmeriCorps level. They are serving at your site as a service volunteer. If you do give them additional benefits like a rent subsidy or something like that, you organizationally may have to have certain forms for them to fill out, or their landlord to fill out, in order to just have that on file. But in terms of being on your payroll or within your system, they are not.
Can organizations interview VISTA members?
Yes, so that's a great question. For both of those programs, the recruitment of the VISTA members, and we'll go into this a little bit later. But the recruitment of our VISTA members does fall on the site. So I'll dive into that a little bit deeper after we get through the full year program. So hold on that question.
Awesome. And is the cost share $300 per VISTA, and are there any additional costs?
Yes, it's $300 per Vista. We are asking that sites apply for no more than 3 summer Vistas, just because we only have 100 at this point to be able to share across the country. And so yeah, it's 300 per Vista, and there are no additional costs outside of that. I do want to highlight for the Summer Vista program, the Vistas are given a NSOWP or sex offender background check through AmeriCorps, but they are not given a violent crime background check through AmeriCorps. So the only additional cost you may accrue if you would like to get your VISTA background checked for your organization.
Awesome. And then the last question is, how can organizations apply for a Summer VISTA?
That's a great question, and I'll put a pin in that one as well, because we'll talk through all of that at the end of the slides. Cool. So now we are going to shift gears, and we're going to talk about the full Summer VISTA program. So when we think about the full year program, this is typically thought of in the AmeriCorps eyes as a 1 to 3 year capacity building project at a site. So it really does support on projects capacity building so that projects can, drive their mission at the community level. And so we really want to think about, if you're on this call because you had a VISTA last year, you're thinking about having a full VISTA this year, when we think about that 3-year program cycle, the first year is really like setting the foundation. So, you made up this VAD and you've come up with this project and you're like, this is what we're going to accomplish. And then you may have accomplished most of that, some of that, a portion of that. And then in year 2, it's about improving that, refining it, making sure that you see growth from year 1 to year 2. And then from year 2 to year 3, we're really about streamlining that and then having a seamless handoff to the organization. So it's really like laying the foundation, perfecting the foundation, and then passing it over to the organization to be able to manage on their own. So we're really thinking about this in a 3-year project life. When you're thinking about maybe how a VISTA can support your organization, it's a 1 to 3 year project. Cool. So it is a full year. And so the service member does serve for 365 days. And we are anticipating our start dates to be in fall 2021. So if you have a VISTA in our program currently, and maybe they started in November, maybe they started October, or maybe they started in January, you would have to, through this call for partnership, apply to either continue your project for next year, so that in 2022 of January, you can bring on a VISTA to continue that project at your site. That could be the same person that's there, or it could be a completely new person who's continuing the work on that project. Our VISTAs do get a living allowance, the same as the summer program, and they do get to choose between an education award or an end of service stipend for the program. It is like a full-time program as well. So they're working that 35 to 40 hours a week as your VISTA. They do have access to healthcare benefits and childcare benefits in the full year program, and they do qualify for non-competitive eligibility at the end of their VISTA term. If they wanted to work in government jobs after this year of service, they would get put ahead of the average civilian in terms of applications and getting interviews and things like that. And so similarly to the summer program, we really don't know what the next year holds for us in terms of COVID-19 and when things will go back to maybe a traditional office setting. So we are at this point being told by AmeriCorps that our full year VISTAs can rework remotely or in person, depending on your state and local regulations. I do want to put a caveat here that, I do think that the AmeriCorps VISTA program truly wants their VISTAs to be able to serve in person in the office setting. So if or when we reach a point in late summer, early fall, or early 2022 where VISTAs can go back to a more traditional office setting, AmeriCorps VISTA, I anticipate will really push for VISTAs to be in person. So I would recommend for the full year program, when you're thinking about who this person could be, to find someone more local or someone who's willing to relocate to your place of where your organization is located when you're thinking about who this person could be. So VISTAs also get PTO, which is great. They get 10 personal days and they get 10 sick days, but they should follow your organization's PTO request guidelines. So they shouldn't just not show up for work one day and say, I'm taking a personal day. They should really be reaching out to you and saying like, hey, I want to take next Tuesday off. Is that okay? You should approve it. And then, they let us know so that we can keep track of those PTO days, but they do get those. And then they also follow the same holiday schedule as your organization. So if you do a winter holiday break, if you do Thanksgiving, all that kind of stuff, the VISTA can follow that same holiday schedule that your organization offers. And then, like I said, they are eligible for relocation benefits if they are moving over 50 miles. They get a $750 relocation benefit, and then they also get money per mile that they're moving. So they do get a little bit of additional funding if they have to move a substantial distance to be a service member at your site. And similarly to that summer program, we do have a comprehensive year-round program for our VISTAs that really brings in that workforce development piece that I talked about earlier that Up2Us Sports is really focusing on. So we anticipate having 10 to 12 professional developments and 10 to 12 reflection activities. And then they also have a cohort leader that they check in with monthly. So all in all of this whole year of programming, we're probably asking for like 24 to 26 hours of your VISTA's time in order to attend these professional developments, do the reflections, and then check in with their cohort leader every single month. And so we do it on many different topics, but we've had professional developments on financial literacy, resume, cover letter, communication style, public speaking. Since AmeriCorps VISTA is really focused on that poverty piece, having conversations around that, cultural competencies. So we really try to bring in a mixture of professional developments for the VISTA members. And then the reflection activities are, connected to the professional development. So for financial literacy, maybe we'll ask them to make a budget. If they have resume or cover letter, we'll ask them to update their resume. So we're trying to make these skills applicable so that they benefit the VISTA through their programming year. And similarly to earlier in the summer program, these are the major markets that we're in, and it breaks down the living allowance that your VISTA would receive for the full year program, the full amount, and then the day rate. Again, the AmeriCorps VISTA program is based on the poverty level of the county of your organization. So we don't set that number, AmeriCorps does. And they get an education award or a cash stipend at the end of $6,345 or $1,800. And you would use that same document that we talked about before. You would just find your county. If you live in Graham County, Arizona, and you want a VISTA, you would take that $3,671 and you would multiply it by 365, and that would give you the entire living allowance that you see here. So. And again, we are located outside of these cities that are listed here. We can place anywhere nationally. We just wanted to, these are our major market cities that we have offices, so those are the ones that are highlighted here. And similarly to the summer program, if you're like in New York City or $21,000 doesn't really get a person very far, how can we support our VISTA further to make sure that this is something that they can actually do? You can, again, do that rent subsidy. You could do MTA passes. You could do like grocery cards. You could do all these other different ways of supporting your VISTA with additional benefits that aren't giving them additional like cash in their pocket. And then similarly, to kind of go back to a question we had earlier, the VISTA, again, is on the payroll of the AmeriCorps program. So they get paid by AmeriCorps. They get their tax documents at the end of the fiscal year from AmeriCorps to do their taxes. So that wouldn't go on the site level at all. The only kind of tax things that you would have to be aware of if you do give them a rent subsidy or things like that, just being aware that you may have to have those documented in your own systems for where that money's going. Cool. And so speaking back to that opportunity listing and badge, so AmeriCorps has a system that they use where they have one large, basically like job board for all of the VISTA postings that are available across the entire United States. And so every one of our VISTA sites has an opportunity listing that they create, and they have a VAD or a VISTA assignment description that they create. So unlike the summer program where it's like you got to work within those 4 buckets, the full year program is really kind of like sky's the limit. Like, what does your organization need capacity building in? And you get to really model and create and adapt a program or a project that your site needs. So it could be finance, operations, it could be marketing development, program operations, it could be monitoring evaluation, it could be your research team. There's so many different things that your VISTA can do to help support you in your capacity building in the full year program. And we really do cater it to like what you need in the project that your site really needs support in. And so you organizationally would create that VISTA assignment description or the VAD. You would create your opportunity listing, and then people would apply to those things. But it's super specific to your site and the needs of your site. So that's one additional benefit of the full year program, is that it can be a little bit more specific to the needs that you have. With the full year program, there is also no direct service. So your full year VISTA shouldn't be the one doing your practices or coaching or anything like that. If you find someone, you're a lacrosse organization, your VISTA used to play lacrosse, they really want to be involved in helping with the lacrosse team, your VISTA could volunteer their own time after their VISTA time to help support your teams or whatever, but they couldn't do that during their VISTA time. So if practice is at 3 p.m. and that's in the middle of your normal work day, a VISTA couldn't just like leave in the middle of work to go coach the team, but they could like do it afterwards. So if your day's done at 5 and they go help with the teams at 5, that's great. If they help on the weekends, that's great. They're just using their own time in order to support your organization at a coaching level. So like we talked about at the beginning, I really do want to highlight this because people are coming into this VISTA, full year VISTA program in a lot of different places. So in year 1 is either your first time, you've never had a VISTA before and you're ready to go, or you've had a VISTA before, but that project is either complete or you've done your 3-year cycle and now you want a new project at your site because you need more help. And so this has to be something that is realistic in scope and size. So you can't expect the VISTA to like move mountains in the first year, but they can make a significant impact if you have a really clear idea of what you want them to accomplish and your project that you're looking to do. And like I said, it really does lay the foundation. We aren't expecting you to say like, we're going to do these things and then like hit every single one, but we really do expect the VISTA to really be working towards those goals and objectives that you've set out for them in your project. So that's what happens in year 1. Either you're brand new to VISTA and you've never had one before, or you're a site that's had a VISTA, but your other project's done and you're ready to start something new. And then if you're coming to this presentation and like, I had a VISTA last year, or I've had a VISTA working on a project for the last 2 years, and now, we're in this 3-year cycle. I really do want to just make sure that you really think about the continuation of the project from year 1 to year 2, or from year 2 to year 3. So if you had a VISTA this year and you're looking to have a VISTA again next year for that same project, you need to look at your VAD that you've had for this year and think, okay, what did we accomplish? And then how can we show that we're growing from where we started? And then similarly from year 2 to year 3, you're like, what did we accomplish in the last 2 years? And how can we show that we're streamlining this and really like moving towards that transition of handing it off to the organization? So I really did want to highlight those so that you can capture that in your application for the program. And in the application, and we'll go over this at the end, there are very, very clear examples of what we're looking for with all the questions that ask about like, what's your project? What are your plans for recruitment? Who's managing this person? We created a pretty comprehensive breakdown of like what we're looking for in those answers, so you can really think about how you're going to answer it and the way that you're going to support the VISTA throughout the year. Do we have any questions about any of that, Danielle?
Yes, we do. If an organization hosted a VISTA for a 3-year cycle and then took a break, can they bring on a VISTA again in like a different project or department?
Yes. Then you would just start back at year 1.
Awesome. And will we send a programming schedule to sites just so that they can plan around our schedule?
Yes, we will. We are working towards creating one of those schedules so that everyone's very clear about, when these professional developments will be and things like that at the beginning of the service year.
Can VISTA members be DACA individuals?
That's a great question, and we'll go into this. So, AmeriCorps VISTA members do need to be 18 years or older, and they either have to be a citizen of the U.S. or they have to be a permanent resident. So, if your person falls into all of those buckets or 2 of those buckets, then they can be a part of the AmeriCorps program. If they don't, unfortunately, at an AmeriCorps policy level, they wouldn't be able to join the program.
Awesome. And is the host site responsible for paying the health care and living allowance?
No. So we'll go into that right now. So the full year program has a cost share fee of $7,500. So for the full year program, they get their living allowance, they get their education award, and they get those healthcare benefits or childcare benefits if they choose to enroll into those. Your contribution to that cost is $7,500. And so that will be broken into the 4 equal installments of $1,975. So you organizationally, if you apply for a VISTA, you get awarded a VISTA, you sign the MOU, you have to pay the first payment, which is at $1,975, is a non-refundable deposit, and that's due within 45 days of signing the MOU. So if you decide you don't want a VISTA or you can't fill the slot, you will be in that a little over $1,900. And then the remaining 3 payments essentially will be at the beginning of the next quarter. So that $1,975 covers the first 3 months, the second payment will cover the next 3 months, and on. And so if your VISTA leaves in quarter 2, so they leave at month 5, you would only owe the payment for the first 2 months. You wouldn't owe the payment for the second 2 months where your VISTA didn't serve. If your VISTA made it, 7 months, then they made it into that 3rd quarter. So then you would owe the first 3 payments, but not the last one. So that's pretty much how that policy works within the organization in terms of refunds for the full year program. You're essentially like paying for the next quarter up front. And then if your VISTA leaves at any point during that, you just wouldn't owe the payments after that quarter. Danielle, were there any additional questions within that?
Yeah, someone pointed out, just to confirm, to get to 7,500, the cost shares would be 1,875.
Oh, yeah, sorry, that was a mistake on my part. 1,875. I'll make that.
Awesome.
Yeah,
and then, and then another question is, if an organization gives like 1 week off at the end of December, does it count towards a VISTA's personal days?
No, that would just fall within your organization's holiday schedule, so they wouldn't have to use their PTO for that.
Cool. And what are the grant reporting requirements for sites?
That's a great question. So throughout our program year, we have our VISTAs collect some data on the things they're doing. So they collect data on any professional development hours they receive. They collect data on like if they're doing development, how much money they're raising. And we collect some data on, how many volunteers they help or the organization gets over the course of the month. So they do that each month, and their VISTA and their cohort leader supports them in the process of tracking that data and things like that. So the data is a pretty comprehensive document that shows like quantitatively like what they've accomplished over the year. So they can show that they raised X amount of money or they help support so many volunteers. So we have that piece that we have to collect on, and that's at the VISTA level. So we get all that. So at the site level, we do have 2 reports that we have to submit every year. So we have one that's usually in like January, February, and one that's in August. So we ask during each of those rounds of reporting, we do send out like a Google survey where we ask you to answer a few narrative questions, just talking about maybe challenges, great achievements, you know, what's been working, what hasn't been working. So that's really at the baseline what you would be responsible in terms of reporting, is just giving back to us about 2 times a year some narrative information, so we have a pretty good sense of what's going on across all of the organizations and what's working and what isn't working. We also have within our program model a feedback loop with you and your VISTA, and a more formal check-in. There's a word for it that I'm blanking on at this point, and it happens at the 3, 6, and 9 month mark. So we send out a form and we ask you to fill it out. We ask your VISTA to fill it out, and then we ask you to meet to give each other feedback on how things are going, if you're really working towards those project goals you set out in the VAD. So we do ask you to do that at the site level as well. So 2 surveys in September, and in August, and in like January, February, and then at the 3, 6, and 9 month mark to have the feedback conversation with your VISTA member.
Awesome. And then can you clarify, is the full year VISTA program a 3-year program with the same person?
No. So that's a great question. So I guess the 3 years is scope. So when VISTA sets out, they think that a project should be able to accomplish their goal within a 3-year scope. So every year with Up2Us Sports, so if you're in year 1, you have to reapply to have a VISTA again in year 2, and then you have to reapply for a VISTA in year 3. So when you get awarded in year 1, you're not getting awarded for 3 years, you're just getting awarded for that 1 year. And then if you're like, we still need support, let's go for year 2, and then let's go for year 3. Within that 3-year scope, you could have a VISTA, you could have the same VISTA all 3 years. You could have a different VISTA every year. You could have the same VISTA 2 years and a different VISTA at the end. So it doesn't need to be the same person who is supporting your organization as you accomplish this like larger scope of a project that you're interested in. So it doesn't need to be the same person. And it's really just how AmeriCorps thinks about the VISTA program, is in like a 3-year scope kind of way.
Great, thanks. And then the last question is, are supplemental benefits like rent or gas cards considered a part of the application, and do they help a site get awarded a VISTA member?
So we don't ask for that information in the application, but it's definitely something you should consider. And I do think that that is a helpful bonus to attract VISTA members to be able to do the year of service. You know, we do encourage organizations to recruit, you know, locally within the communities that they serve. And so sometimes a VISTA can live on the living allowance, and sometimes that can be a little bit harder. So adding these extra benefits is definitely a great way to support your member, and to also be able to like help them be able to make it through the year. But it's definitely not required, and we have many sites and many VISTAs who they don't offer any additional benefits, and their VISTA is able to make it through the year.
Awesome. We just had one more pop in, but if your VAD is in like programming capacity, can the VISTA work in curriculum development as long as the curriculum is taught by other people once it's tested?
Yeah, 100%, definitely. Cool. So now we're just going to transition, and this is really speaking to the eligibility requirements for VISTA, summer program or full year program. These are the things to consider in terms of like who can be your VISTA and you know what you're looking for. So like I mentioned before, they do have to be 18 years or older, and they either have to be a citizen or a permanent resident. And AmeriCorps has some pretty strict policies around nepotism. So, you know, you can't hire in pretty much anybody that's related to you or living in the same like house structure as you. So that's just something to consider as you're going through this process. VISTAs do not need to be college graduates. We get this question a lot. You know, if you have someone who you think can do the job, who is 18 years or older and a citizen or a permanent resident, and they're not related to you, then, you know, by all means, do it. They don't have to be a college graduate. They don't have to be a high school graduate. They really don't have to have those qualifications in order to do this. It's really at the site level as to like what your project needs, you know, and the skill set that you need to be able to accomplish that. And then does this person have it? Do they need a college degree to do that? So that's something to consider, but we do get that question a lot. And then, sites are ultimately responsible for recruiting their members. We at Up2Us Sports have some abilities to support you. For the full year program, we have the AmeriCorps system, my AmeriCorps portal, where we post that opportunity listing. So you get a little bit more candidates that way. For the summer program, we really do think you should kind of have someone in mind, or have some ideas about who you might reach out to within your community to help support that role. And so we put a lot of the onus of finding this person on the site, because we don't want to give you someone who doesn't fit the culture of your organization, doesn't have the skills that you need, who just isn't a match. We really want to make sure that you're finding the person that's the best fit for you and your organization and what your project needs. And so when you're doing this, we really, really do want you to consider, like, who's managing this person, and then like what's their management style, and then like how they're best able to support a VISTA member. Because sometimes VISTAs come in and they're like, maybe they're pivoting careers and they have a lot of experience, and they can like hit the ground running. And sometimes they are recent college grads or someone who's new to a space or a field, and they need a little bit more support to be able to do the things they're doing. So really consider like who is managing this person and what skill sets they have and what you're looking for this job. But really be intentional about knowing if they're self-starters, if they're independent, what their time management skills are, what their project management skills are, what their communication skills are, how they like to be managed. These are all things to consider as you're thinking about who this VISTA could be and how they could support your organization, because we have found that a lot of the challenges or the points of conflict within our program have really happened when the VISTA isn't maybe meeting the expectation of the organization, because the organization thought the VISTA could do things that maybe they just haven't gotten the skill sets for yet, because this is their first time in a workspace. So we really want you to think about all of those avenues as you're interviewing and looking for people if you get awarded. And so for both of the programs, they are on SurveyMonkey. Unfortunately, they're not in the same application. They are separate. And so for each of them, we do have Word documents. So I'll show you what they look like. So this is the full year partnership application, and it's connected to our coach program. So you can see here at the bottom, if you want a coach in a VISTA, you can go through that process. If you just want a VISTA, you can go through that process. And so when you click on these, it brings you to a Word document that has all of the questions in them. We highly encourage you to work off of the Word document first. SurveyMonkey is a great resource and a great system, but it doesn't allow you to save and go back. And so we don't want people to like get going in there, write some great things, and then they can't access it anymore. So we highly recommend, opening up these documents, making a copy so that you can edit them, and then filling in the answers for the bigger questions within that document. And like I mentioned before, if you scroll through here, you'll see that like there are clear examples that you can click on that will give you a clear rundown of, like what we are looking for in terms of an answer to help you shape the way that you answer the questions. So that is what the returning site looks like. And then for the Summer VISTA program, it's basically the same. It gives you a layout of the program, and then the same thing, gives you the Word documents for you to be able to answer in there. And then clear examples of what we're looking for in the examples. So we really did just want to highlight those 2 pages of the application so that you know what you're looking for. And so for the summer program, I would say that application probably takes 30 to 45 minutes to complete if you sat down and did it all at once. And the full year program probably takes a little bit more time, around like 45 to an hour. And so the deadline for summer is March 12th, and the deadline for full year is February 26th. The reason these deadlines are so off from each other, for our full year program, we have a grant continuation that we're working on now, and we like to include, to the best of our abilities, the sites that we'll be working with in our continued application in the year. So we want to try to have the application and the award letters through as quickly as possible. And then for the summer program, we just have a little bit more time in order to get all that stuff together. So that's why those dates are a little bit off from each other. but those are the two what to really know about the application. Great. Does anybody have any additional questions?
Yeah, we have a few.
Cool.
Are there additional rules around recruitment? Like, can organizations recruit from their current pool of volunteers?
That's a great question. So a VISTA can't replace like an employee. So like if you, and we'll send out a really great resource as well, an FAQ document that also gets into this so you can refer back to it. But so like if you have a volunteer who just like works there and you're like, or volunteers there and you're like, yeah, we think you would be a great person to like grow into this different role, whether they were a coach or they were, you know, doing whatever else you need volunteers for. That's an okay like transition back upwards into your organization. If this person was like your marketing manager and then now you can't afford a marketing manager, but this program is cheaper, that you want this person to now be your marketing VISTA, like that is something that can't happen. The VISTA can't like replace someone's role. It can't like take over the responsibilities of someone who's maybe out on maternity leave or paternity leave or illness leave. It can support a department. So, you know, if you have a marketing director and you want to bring in a marketing to VISTA and your marketing director does everything, well, now you want your VISTA to do social media. Like that's an okay, like, you know, passing of a project or a responsibility, but it can't take over for something that's already currently a full-time role in your organization.
Awesome. And can VISTAs pursue like an internship or practicum during their service?
So yeah, a VISTA can have a part-time job while they're in service as long as it doesn't affect your like work schedule. They do have to submit a form to us just so that we have that documented. And then a VISTA can also be in school. Again, making sure that their schedule doesn't impede with that 35 to 40 hour work week. So a VISTA can do that. I would need to double check about the internship piece, but I feel like as long as they can like fit those other things in within your 35 to 40 hours a week, you should be fine. In terms like, can the VISTA program count as their internship? I would need to look into the specifics of that a little bit more, but can't get back to you.
Cool. And is full year for 2022?
Yeah, so full year is for 21 and 22. So it would be from like August 2021 through like probably April 2022.
Awesome. And if a site is just starting or like expanding programs for minority and underserved populations, how would you suggest they clarify this in the application?
Yeah, so there are some like pretty clear questions in there that ask you to get pretty specific about what your intentions for the VISTA are. So I think in those areas, that would be a great place to add that. I did have a question the other day that one of the questions asked like, so Up2Us Sports really focuses on like sports and sports-based development. So we really want to build those capacities within that space. So all programs that we work with should have some sort of youth and sport lens, and they have to be a 501c3 or a nonprofit. But you know, some organizations are brand new and they're developing like what that sport and movement piece will be. So if you're not quite sure, you know, your organization is focusing on like LGBTQ kids, LGBTQ plus like a population of youth, and you want to make sure there's a movement piece in your organization, you don't need to be like, we do basketball if you don't know if you're going to do basketball, but you can say like, you know, we are using movement to support this community. This is how we think it's going to look. And then the VISTA would help us build curriculum around that or something like that. That's completely fine. I think that answers the question.
Awesome. And then last question is, can VISTAs work in fundraising?
Yes, they can work in fundraising. They can help with LOIs, research, all that kind of stuff. They can work in fundraising in the summer program and the full year program, whatever kind of support that your organization needs.
Awesome. Those are all the questions.
Cool. Well, we are at the end of the hour, so we'll stay on for a couple more minutes in case you have some lingering questions. But after this call, we'll send out this deck. We'll also send out the FAQ document I referenced because it does really kind of break down all questions you might have, and then the links to both the summer application and the full year VISTA application. But thank you all so much for joining. We really appreciate it. And if you have any questions, please reach out. We'll be happy to walk you through and support you in any way we can. Danielle, just let me know if any more questions popped in there.
How many members can they interview?
You can interview as many as you want until you find the person that you know, fits in your fits what you need.
Awesome. And how many full-time VISTAs can organizations apply for?
That's a great question. So I would say that an organization probably at this point, probably I'm going to say like we'll be able to host 1 to 3 VISTAs at a time.
Awesome.
Pat, I think I just allowed you to chat. So if you have a question you want to say aloud, you should.
Okay, yes, yeah. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Considering the personal time and the sick days, what do you do if a VISTA becomes seriously ill, for example, with COVID?
Yeah, that's a great question. So VISTAs are able to apply for additional emergency leave. So,
Right.
you know, if they haven't used any of their PTO, they have 20 days. So that's like a month that they could take off. Plus they can apply for an additional, it's like 5 to 7 days, right, Danielle?
Mm-hmm.
The emergency leave?
Yeah, so they could take upwards of like 5 weeks off. If it's like COVID related, there are, I think, some additional like support around that. So there's like, I think some COVID relief. So they get it. They need to quarantine for 14 days. There is additional, I think, emergency leave around that, and I can look specifically. But if it's something else that they get sick or something like that, they can use a lot of that PTO time in order to support their whatever they need, and then they have that additional emergency leave.
Okay, I have 2 other questions.
Yep.
That they are not necessarily specific to our organization, but they didn't seem to fit into your wonderful presentation. You really covered everything and you got it within the hour, but I still have these questions, which are,
yeah, no worries.
If I were, a manager of a company and people, were looking for certain benefits, I would want to give a lot more benefits than we're able to do with VISTA. So for example, if a woman is pregnant and gives birth, do you have anything specific to maternity leave, or is it just still within the parameters of the personal leave and emergency leave that can be applied to that?
It is, I believe so, within those parameters, but I can double check. So the marketing team actually has to use this particular Zoom for their own presentation. So what I can do, Pat, is I can give you a call and we can walk through these additional questions that you have. Thank you everyone for joining. If you do have additional questions, just feel free to reach out. We'll definitely answer them. But we do have to give this Zoom over to our marketing team.
Okay, goodbye.
All right, bye everyone. Thank you so much.